please do continue on with that. And I'd like you to put your virtual hands together as I hand things over to you, John, for the rest of the evening.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time on this Wednesday evening to come and listen to me. Okay, let me just quickly. All good? All right, great. Okay, so today the topic will be living a balanced life. And in fact, when I thought about the topic, it may eventually not be what you think it is, but I think it'll be good anyway. Okay, so living a balanced life. Let's start first with this. Okay, you see here a very nice handphone. I just picked the image from Google. I'm not even sure what handphone is this. Is this a Samsung or a Huawei or what? But okay, when you think of a handphone, get ready to type in the chat. What are the important features of a handphone that are important to you? In the chat, anyone? Oh, has anyone typed anything? Size, camera, memory, right? And yeah, right, what exactly? Right, good battery life, right? Everybody wants good battery life. I mean, we are already nowadays struggling, charging our phones throughout the day in the car. Cannot imagine having worse battery life than what your phones offer you nowadays, lah. Right? You want speed. You want a nice, very nice screen, to watch your videos in 1080, or in fact, phones are even higher resolution than that, but you want a very nice screen, right? You want a very good quality camera for your phone, so that you can take all those nice photos and post it on, Instagram and Facebook. You want reliability and good warranty. You don't want a phone that breaks down on you every other week. And you want a phone with a lot of apps. So let's say, for a phone, these are probably some of the 6 most important features, right, of a phone, right? And I think the key thing here, and why I picked this example, is that there's a saying, a famous quote in the design world that says that no one feature alone can make something great. Yet there are a lot of features that are important enough that they cannot be neglected, right? And the concept here is, you can have a phone with an amazing camera, but if it's too slow, it's useless, right? You can have a phone that has very nice screen, but if it breaks down every other week, it is also not good enough, right? And no matter how, you need some degree of a good battery life. Right, and nowadays, in fact, I don't even know how phone manufacturers, I would not like to be a phone manufacturer, because nowadays, people are very demanding, right? They actually want a phone that has great battery life, good speed, good camera, good everything, and they want it cheap as well. Peng Leng Cheng, right? And quite quickly, if you think, same goes for car, because I'm just trying to how to say, connect with, some people are car people, some people are phone people, right? And so for a car, same thing, right? The important features: design, fuel consumption, speed, cabin comfort. And in the same way, you want a fast car that doesn't break down, right? You want a car that looks nice, but you don't really want to pay too much for it. So in the same way, this famous quote again. And in fact, if you Google for this quote, you won't actually find it. Actually, I just came up with the quote the other day. Yeah, but the key thing here is, there's no one feature alone that will make a car great. And all these 6 features are important enough, right? Important enough that not one of them can be neglected, right? You cannot have all 5 of the others and then just completely have no reliability and safety, for example, or completely have a terrible design, right? And so that's in bringing up these 2 examples. That's the key point. That's the key point. And same thing in life, right? For us, what do you think are some of the features, or well, not so much features, but what would be the 6 important things for us? Right, and I know it's going to be a bit broad, and I probably won't get the answers that I put, but maybe feel free to also type in the chat now, right? In the same way, what's probably 6 areas of your life that are important. I saw family, good one. Relationships. Oh, this is like almost exactly what is going to come up next probably. Right, health. Thank you, Isaac. And me time, very good. Okay, thank you. And yeah, wealth. Okay, you'll be surprised with the answers later, right? So okay, here are the answers. Cash, car, condo. Yeah, I think I mixed up the slides. Sorry. I didn't mean this lah. But in case for people who don't know, 5 C's were something that were quite. It was big in the 90s lah, right? In the 90s, everyone's talking about cash, car, condo, credit card, and country club, right? Very important. Okay, but please ignore. Sorry, this one mistake. Okay, the important thing is exactly what you guys wrote. Family. Having good relationship with your family. Having good relationship with friends. Friends extended to the church family as well, right? Having relationship with God, right? I mean, in no particular order lah, right? All these are important, right? Physical health, yes, your physical health is an important aspect. Your finances are important as well. Your mental health, that me time, that positivity, and it's quite broad, this topic, but I'll help probably define it a bit later. But it's about being positive, having a good frame of mind, having a good perspective, attitude about life, and some level of being happy at work and doing well at work, right? Or in school, right? And in the same way, no one feature, no one aspect alone is important. Is focusing on one aspect alone is not enough. And none of these things, you can say can be neglected lah, right? I mean, there's like no point having good finances and just having completely no relationships with your family, for example. Yeah, and okay, so here I've put the 7 important aspects of life, and I just wanted to define it a little bit more, so that when we talk about these topics, it's a little bit clearer when it's defined a little bit more, right? And so one way of defining things is to say, okay, what is bad, right? What does not so great look like, right? So not so great for could mean a broken family, right? On the family side, completely no friends, or toxic relationships with friends, zero interaction with God. On the health side, zero exercise, unhealthy diet. On the finances side, large debt, high spending, no income, some level of depression, anxiety, low self-esteem. And on the work side, you completely dislike your job, and it's just a terrible work environment, right? And this is just defining it, defining the 2 spectrums, right? And I think what's important is this thing is flexible. We can each define these things ourselves, set our own parameters for these topics. But let's look at what great looks like, right? Great looks like happy and positive family environment, good friends, lots of interactions, having supportive friends, frequently pray, frequently worship, read the Bible, always trusting God, always looking to God, consistent exercise and healthy diet, lots of savings, stable income, low spending, and just that positivity, that being excited about life and some level of doing well at work and having being happy at your work or at school, right? And the truth is, we all fall somewhere in between lah, right? For most of these things, and there's this concept in when you're doing an improvement exercise, and it's a common concept in consulting. It's called baselining, right? And baselining is essentially helping establish where you are today, right? So one thing you could do, and you don't have to do it, but one thing you could do is to actually do this and actually go through, right, each of this. Oh, family, yeah, okay, number 3, friends, recently not so much engagement with friends because of MCO. Number 2, didn't quite read the Bible, not quite following the series that is in the WhatsApp groups. Number 2, that's fine. Eating a little bit more than wanted to, exercising a little bit less than I wanted to. For example, these are just examples, right? Finances, yeah. You maybe spending a little bit more than you wanted to, because of everything, this whole MCO thing, maybe not as, just a little bit less positive than average, and some level maybe of just not liking your boss, or not being happy at work, right? And I think the key thing, one of the important things in baselining is just to be very honest, to very honest with yourself, right? Anyway, if you do an exercise like this, it's only for yourself, right? To see. And if you do something like this, then it just helps you be able to identify, okay, where you are in some of these areas, right? And I think part of going through this whole thing, and I wanted to also set the stage. It's not about telling you today, hey, these things here are 7 more things you need to focus on, because you already not doing enough, or you don't already have enough things to worry about. Let me give you 7 more things to worry about. No, it's not about that, right? It is about the principle, I would say, from the Bible, it's about living the best life that God has planned for us, right? In 1 Jeremiah 29:11, it says that, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future, right? It is about really claiming the best life that God has planned for us, right? And so it's not about giving you more things to think about, but it's more about living out the potential that we have in our lives. Okay, and some of the tips that we can, that I like, and I've tried myself, and I think this is a good way to start, right? Is to start small, right? There's this thing in I'm not even sure what to really call it, but there's this whole movement called Kaizen, where it's about continuous improvement, with really small changes, just small steps, right? You don't have to go, for example, if you are here, you don't have to go like, okay, let me go and, I'm going to go for like all 4s and 5s, right? By next week, I'm going to move from 2, I'm going to go all out and hit the 4s and the 5s by next week, right? And then typically what happens is, it just may be too much, right? And then there's this whole thing about, and I think it works as well, about just taking those small steps, right? Just taking those small steps. Hey, let me focus on 2 or 3 areas. Let me try to improve it from a 1 to a 2, from a 2 to a 3, right? And then it doesn't seem so daunting. It doesn't seem so overwhelming, right? When you think about it in small incremental steps, right? And here are some of the things that we can do. Here are some of the small changes that we can potentially do. And these are just ideas. These are, there are probably thousands of small things you can do for each of these 7 areas. But here is just an example, right? With your family, maybe just think about, one small thing you can say, one positive thing you can say to your family members to encourage them, right? Very small things with friends, it could be a small gift, to remind people that you care for them, or are thinking about them, sending an encouraging message to someone, right? Even your relationship with God, just a quick prayer sometimes, 1 worship song a day, 1 chapter a week, right? 1 extra chapter a week, right? Just small things that we can add on. With health, 15-minute walks, we're not talking about 1 hour runs, a little bit, 3 more pieces of broccoli, than a week than you normally would, just that little bit more vegetables, maybe like 50 grains of rice less, for when you're eating rice. And even finances, could you spend 100 ringgit less a week? I think not too hard, start with 100 ringgit less, right? And then even for yourself, your mental health, just that one positive thought, that simple appreciation for some small things in life, right? Or at work, just same thing, right? One encouraging thing you can say to your colleague, right? Or just having a positive thought at the workplace. And at the same time, I think small steps are great, but if you can commit, if you are comfortable, with going all out, with saying, hey, I want to just do something a bit more, and you're comfortable with it, and it's not too daunting, right? For family, think of like some project you can do together, some longer term activity, that can really build the family together, right? With friends, find that one person or two people that you feel that you could want to help them through a tough time, spend some extra, give them some extra attention, give them some help, some counseling perhaps, and then in your relationship with God, you can go bold, go big, right? Serve in the new ministry, take on something new, one extra book a week, that kind of thing, right? And then with health, you can do the full exercise regime 5 times a week, 2 hours a day, right? Finances, it can be like, starting an online business for additional income, right? And then positivity, some level of going through a positivity program, going through having that extra, really setting aside some me time, that really builds your personal mental strength and positivity, right? And then at the workplace, just maybe taking on a new role, taking on or starting CF at the workplace, right? Or being bold for and trying to apply for that dream job, for example, right? And there's no right there's no right or wrong. All these plans are very flexible. There is essentially no right or wrong. It has to be something that you are comfortable with, and something you feel that you can do okay, that you're comfortable with. And basically, how, right? I've thrown you already like so many things. I've thrown you some concepts. I've thrown you like a lot of words, a lot of things, but sometimes the execution part, right? If you wanted to keep it simple, right? If you wanted to keep it simple, you could just do this, right? For example, just and I would say again, start like a little bit easy, something easy to commit to. Just have a thing, right? Just maybe spend a few times a week, 2 minutes every other day, maybe, right? To think about these things, think about these 7 areas. And then, maybe once a week, spend 5 minutes, planning what you're going to do, right? And this is extremely fluid. I'm just giving an example, that you can even achieve good things with just, 2 minutes of thinking about these things every other day, right? And it just starts with setting aside that 2 minutes. And it's flexible, you could take this, you could even spend the next, after this presentation tonight, you just sit down for 1 hour, and work out, okay, what, and really have some deep thoughts about this thing. But I'm saying that's great as well. But, even 2 minutes a day, or 2 minutes twice a week, or even 2 minutes a week, it works as well, right? And it's really also down to individual preferences, as well as what we're comfortable and able to do. And then just one more point, which is quite close to the first one. The first one is that we know that God wants us to live a full life, the full potential. The second is to also know that as his children, we actually have access to his excellence, right? We know that we have a perfect God, and we have some degree of access to God's excellence, right? In 1 Peter 2:9, it says, "You are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light." And if I was to just summarize this whole point, I would say the key thing is to not be afraid of excellence. Right, I know we are in a grace church, right? And then sometimes, we confuse excellence with performance, with with self-work. But I would like to say, yeah, don't be afraid of excellence, right? Don't be afraid of claiming the excellence that that is actually bestowed upon us, lah, right? And I think the one example of this is, in a lot of companies, for example, there are these 6 very common areas, right? Sales, operations, marketing, finance, HR, IT. And I would say that the best companies, right, do well in all these 6 areas, right? And I would say, in not being afraid of excellence, let's claim, some level of claiming from, just claiming to God, hey, Lord, I claim, 5s in all these areas of my life. I claim, a happy and positive family environment. I claim for my life good friendships. Help me, Lord, with my relationship with you, that I can, be always look to you, always, in my, with my exercise and my diet. Give me good discipline. Help me with, being able to manage my finances well. Give me the joy of the Lord always in everything that I do, and even in my workplace, right? Give me favor, that I can do my work well, and that I'll be happy in my job, right? So and if you ask me, these are not things that we should be ashamed of claiming, right? If anything, asking God for these things seems very right, lah, right? There's nothing wrong with asking God for all these areas, to do well in all these areas of our life. And with every program, not say program lah, with every like exercise like this, right? Exercise like this, the one thing that will for sure happen is that we will make some progress. But eventually there will be some progress, and eventually we will find ourselves slipping every now and then, falling a little bit behind, and things improving, but then just getting a little bit getting worse sometimes, right? And it's a very normal thing, right? And the key, I would say, is to just always move forward, right? And I've learned this quite a bit in recently the past few years. I worked in an environment where my boss, there is literally a disaster lah. I would say a disaster in the office every other day, right? And then it's really just one step backward, and then my boss would just roll up his sleeves and just really work through those disasters, right? It's about and it's just also just generally what happens in life, right? And we see a lot of examples of it in the Bible. We see David being exiled before he became king. We see Joseph being a slave, before becoming a ruler, right? And we see Moses wandering the desert for 40 years before not even going to the promised land, right? And even Jesus had to die to conquer death, right? So one step backward, 2 steps forward, it's a normal part of life, even as we go through, even as we face challenges in these 7 areas of our life, remember to just keep moving forward, to keep pressing on, okay? The final tip here, or the final, what do you call it? Suggestion, or one of the points is that, everyone is going to be at different levels, right? And there'll always be that one person, let's say you are the red one, there'll always be that one person who just is doing better, right? And the key thing here is, when we look at these people, try not to look at them with envy or with jealousness. Look at it perhaps as inspiration, right? That's like, oh, okay, wow, this guy, his exercise routine is very good. He's really doing well with his healthy eating, or he's, wow, he is doing the Bible reading thing, and reading exercise consistently. Let it inspire you to some level, right? Let it inspire you. And the key thing is not to compare yourself to others. And I would say the only person that you need to compare is your today and your tomorrow, not even your yesterday, because you cannot do anything about, you can do nothing about your yesterday, but you can do everything about your tomorrow, right? And sometimes we just feel like, oh, we have both ways, we have done so well, or we have fallen so far compared to where we were yesterday. But doesn't matter, right? There's only today and there's tomorrow, right? And okay, yeah, good for time. And as just to finish off with this, that as a Grace Church, one of the unique things that we can have as a Grace Church is that we can be honest with God, right? We can be honest with God about where we are. We can be honest with ourselves. We can be honest with ourselves about where we stand, where we are in each of these areas, right? And most importantly, we can also be honest with our church members and with our CG, right? And I would say that because we can be honest with God, with ourselves, let us use our CG, let us use the church as a platform for us to help one another, right? To really be able to encourage each other in even in each of these 7 areas, right? Let's say there are 3 of us, and one of us is the red, the yellow, or the green. The key thing is for us to just share ideas, to discuss how we can each improve, to have some level of accountability maybe with one another, and most importantly to encourage one another, right? To even as we face challenges, to encourage each other to keep moving on, to keep pressing on. And yeah, that's pretty much everything I have for today. Let me just summarize by going through the points again. This whole thing, it's not about living, it's not about putting on extra stuff for you to think about, but it's about living the life, the great lives that God have planned for us, right? In each of these 7 things, the earlier point about not one of these things alone is enough, and yet all 7 are also not, you cannot neglect any of the 7 per se lah, right? Remember the small wins, just small wins, small steps are great, but if you're comfortable, you can go for you can be ambitious as well. Here are some of the small things we can do to get those small mini improvements first. Just 2 minutes a week even is enough. 2 minutes a day is even better. Then maybe just spend an extra 5 minutes to plan out some of the things that you may want to do. A reminder that we all have access to God's excellence. Do not be afraid to have an excellent life, right? Do not be afraid to claim that from God. Some level of backtracking or of slipping is normal, but just remember to every time you take 1 step back, just keep pressing on, to take those 2 steps forward, right? Everyone is different. Just compare your today and your tomorrow. Don't worry about yesterday. Don't worry about anyone else. And as a Grace Church, let's be honest with God. Let's be honest with our church members. Let's help each other. Let's discuss ideas. Let's and just encourage each other to just be living better, the best lives that God has planned for us. And I finish here. I maybe let me take some questions. Yeah, let me take some questions. And feel free to, if I don't have the answers to some of the questions, I welcome others to also help me answer any questions. Yeah.
Thanks, John. That was really awesome sharing. Questions are coming in. So please, type out your questions. We have lots of time tonight to take your questions. You can put them in the chat, or you can send them personally to myself or to John as well. Type out those questions, anything you're thinking about this topic. I think, John, what you've shared so far is really awesome truths. I love it. You're encouraging us to think about God's excellence and what he has for our lives. That's really great, but with practical tips. I saw some of the chat groups are like already sharing your slides. Okay, so it's so good. I see it coming up already. The slides are really awesome and really good tips. So let's start with the questions. And I really encourage everyone that as I'm reading this first one, please do type out some more questions. We have lots of time tonight. It's time to pick Yujon's brain. Okay, we don't get to talk to him very often, right? He's like usually behind the scenes. So tonight he's right front and center. We get to pick his brains about this. So there's one question that says, how can we overcome the common issue of not enough time? Like if you lack exercise, but just couldn't squeeze the time to do it.
Yeah. Once again, I'm just sharing a concept. I'm not an expert in life, and in fact, I'm sure there are a lot of people who can help answer this question as well. But let me just start first by saying that I think this is where the small wins part really helps. It's just doing the incremental thing, right? It's always very hard to kickstart a 5-day 35-minute a day program, but it's a lot easier to do a 10-minute thing, right? Start with 10 minutes 3 times a week. Just start with push-ups and sit-ups. Just start with light dumbbells, and just get something going, right? And then there's always this thing. Once the moment you start something and you start building a routine for it, the easier it is to potentially add on, right? You start with just that 15 minutes a day, 15 minutes, 3 times a week, and then slowly it just builds up. You feel more comfortable with it, and you manage to squeeze out that time, right? You manage to squeeze it out from other things in life, right? So no hard and fast rule, but I think this incremental thing works lah. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that's really good advice. John, I think we've all experienced that, right? We can find maybe the time somewhere. I know Michelle last week shared something really powerful, which is if we think we don't have enough time, look at the screen report of your time on your phone, and then you will see how much time you have, right? Okay, so we can all find maybe that time. It is difficult in our busy lives, but hopefully we can find small amounts of time. I think that's a really good advice. All right, that was one great question. It's the only one I see so far. So come on, everybody. Here's your time, your chance before we close things over for the night. Okay, another question here coming in. What happens when everything becomes urgent?
Yeah, so there's also an add-on to the previous one, right? I mean, the other thing is also about actually for these things. A lot of times we especially these 7 areas, we take these areas for granted, right? It's one of the things, right? We in fact sometimes don't even think about these things actively, and you'll be surprised just by starting your day thinking about these 7 things. It probably helps, right? Because we can actually go through most of our day and not even remember some of any of these 7 areas, or forget a lot of the areas of life. So I think some level of spending that 2 minutes first to think about these things, and then that will probably help prioritize. Well, you have everything that's urgent and you have everything that's important, right? And just spending that 2 minutes helps put some of these things into that urgent list lah, if you ask me, right? Because not thinking about them at all, they just completely get off that urgent list. But sometimes these things can, by just thinking about them, it goes into that urgent list, right? The other thing is really about I don't know, is anyone else doing a time management series? But a lot about time management is really being able to prioritize and what is important in life, right? Because there are a lot of urgent things and we can get lost in a lot of urgent things, but sometimes we really need to step back and think, hey, what is really important in life? What are the urgent things potentially that I can cut out, right? And a lot of times on that day itself, it's too late to cut those things out. But if you have if you plan ahead, if you think, hey, this thing is taking up a lot of my time, these things are becoming very urgent, let me plan how I can, cut these things, potentially cut these things out, right? Yeah, and that's also takes a bit of longer term thinking lah, and really just sometimes stepping back a bit, and being able to prioritize what is truly important in our lives. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, you have me as your host. Pastor Susan has something to attend, so you have a not so good looking alternative. In terms of what Eugene has said, I think is really important about taking a step back, having planning and prioritizing. I think is good. One of the questions I guess is a bit related to this. Of the 7 important things that you listed, John, what are the relative weightages for each of these things?
Well, the only one of the things I can say is that, it's going to be very personal, right? It's going to be very different for each person, and it's just how we are made up to be, right? And God also created us with all to be different, and in fact, He probably needs some of us to prioritize some of these things more than other people would, right? So it's also some level of listening to God, and being able to then know, and finding that, and it all comes down from thinking, just thinking about these areas, right? And in fact, I would say one of the things you probably want to do is start ranking these things for yourself, right? What out of these 7, which one do I want to make the most important, or which ones do I want to see that improvement in, right? And the only thing I can say is that it's going to be very different for everyone, and it really just starts about taking a step back and thinking about these things lah. Yeah, and even for yourself, prioritizing based on your what you feel is going to be important. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think all of us struggle with it. Everything has higher weightage than the others, and it's hard to then determine unless from beginning we've actually prioritized and we say that, okay, this from the start, I think if this thing comes up, this other thing is more important. But I think point number 3 is probably the most important. When we seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, all these things will be added to us. Somehow, by bringing God into the picture, everything else will be managed, I feel. Even one comment came out from Radha. He says that point number 3, God as one of the important things, right? 1 chapter a week is very stingy. Well, I think like what Eugene is saying, really the little steps. For some people, it may be more, for some people, it's less. Now, anybody else have any questions or anything you want to raise up to Eugene? Anything else? Oh, there's one here from Jonathan. My input on time management: if everything is urgent, neglected these until it becomes urgent. If something is so important, do something now before it becomes urgent. If it's urgent because of self, if it's urgent because it is arrowed to you, how to minimize these? Be assertive.
John, would you want to maybe just explain a little bit more?
Okay, like you mentioned, if you look at urgency and importance, look at those 2 quadrants. Very often it becomes urgent because we do not do anything. We think there's enough time, and then the deadline is here. Usually, if it is important, and then we do it now, then there's no chance of it being urgent, unless it is your boss or colleagues who suddenly allocates work to you. Once or twice, you can accept it, but after a while, you should be able to tell the person, I need to be assertive. I've got other things to do, and I planned my time. Suddenly, you've given me something extra. We need to discuss this. So is it urgent because of yourself, or is it urgent because of somebody else? That may help a lot of people. Yeah, I've had enough, shall we say, wounds. Yeah, a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks,
Does
John.
that help? Yeah.
Or the last sentence, Yujuan, is there any secret sauce that you have for being firm yet not overbearing when you need to prioritize?
Sorry, this is we've been talking about urgency. Yeah.
Let's
Okay.
say, for example, everything is demanding your time. People are demanding your time. How do you be gentle to them but not seem obnoxious? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think there are few ways, right? A few ways to manage when you are in an environment that a lot of things are urgent. So there's some level of no one way is correct. Sometimes one of it is just asking God for the strength to actually finish all those things, right? That sometimes works as well, right? Two, knowing how to not put yourself in that position, right? And some level of also saying no, right? And being able to see that, okay, this thing is coming. It looks like I'm going to have to take on a few things that are going to be urgent. Some level of planning ahead and also learning how to say no, right? And there's also no one correct way to solve this thing, but I would say some level of really just sometimes asking the God for wisdom and strength to just finish it, and two, just some level of planning ahead and saying no. Potentially, that's something that we could do lah.
Yeah, I think that's great wisdom there, Yuan. Even added on by Esther, one of her inputs was that prioritize, delegate, let go of what I can leverage on others' strength, set up boundaries also as not to be a pushover when it is undoable. Yeah, and I think there are interesting ways of whereby we can actually help manage people when they, without saying no, because saying no sometimes can be harsh, especially when it comes from someone who has an authority over us, like our wives, that kind of thing. So some of the things that, I think John shared before in his session was about telling the person, oh, I've got all these bunch of priorities, so help me prioritize, and see if you think all these are important, but yet you want to put something else on top, then how do I prioritize? Yeah. In fact, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add this thing also about, and part of why this works in a sense, thinking about these areas is that, when you start thinking about these areas and start building these areas, then you don't have to, you fight less fires, right? Because you're slowly building on your relationships, with, let's say, your family, you're slowly building over time on your finances, on your health, so that it doesn't, you didn't neglect them and leave it to a point where you end up fighting fires, right? And then that's when you suddenly it becomes urgent, and you are just in this disaster thing, right? So it's also, and I think it works as well in the workplace, to think ahead and to slowly build, whether it's in a project, whether it's in one of these areas, so that you don't neglect it too late. And I mean, this is just one example, but I think it's overall a concept that it could be useful as well. Yeah.
So, Yujuan, how do you know that you're not living a balanced life?
Well, it's so it's not, right. So in fact, yeah, I when I thought back of the title, I didn't. It's not so much about that, right? It's about, and a big part of it is just about knowing where you are. It's all about knowing where you are, and I would summarize it with something like closer to this, right? you can be all tools and just those small steps working towards, it's about today and tomorrow lah, right? Don't worry about whether you're all twos, don't worry about whether you're all fours, but it's just, having a thing that 2 minutes, hey, is there an area I can do a little bit better with? That's I would say that is the premise lah. Yeah.
So it's like having a moment to reflect on our baselines, yeah?
Yeah. And not so much about, hey, minimum you need to be a 3 on this. It's not about that at all. Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? Anybody else? You want to type it in the chat or even unmute and ask our expert here of balanced living, Mr. CU John? Anybody? While you're thinking, we have one of the greatest people I feel in my life who has got amazing prioritization / time management is actually Pastor Peter. So while he's here in the chat, I would love it for one day. We've asked him many times to do a session on this, but how many of you, right, by raise of hands, would like to see a highly successful person share about how to prioritize and to time manage? How many of you would like to raise your hands right now in the chat and see that? Okay, this will be a last, probably a last, not so much of a question, probably a statement. It says that from Esther again, oops, sorry, one moment.
Yeah, I closed the slides, it's fine. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, from Esther, she says that I think a lot of challenges for those starting out a career, for example, just got married, young kids, no help. The challenge of living a balanced life is very difficult. What's your advice to this group of age group?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely there will always be demands on each of our lives. In fact, I don't think it even gets easier, right? Along any part of the way, right? As you take on more responsibilities and you add on church responsibilities as well, it's about just, if you ask me, the advice would be to just spend that 2 minutes a day knowing what is important in your life, knowing that there are small things you can do in each area of your life, and the small things works. Don't neglect any area and let it fall so far back that you then forced to fight fires at the end, right? And it's just really being mindful of all the different areas and just spending that little time, because and a big part of it is just sometimes we can just one of the things about these areas is that we can potentially take these areas for granted, right? We can take these things for granted, and we can end up not thinking about these areas at all sometimes. Yeah.
Thanks, you, John. Really, really good answers and really some great practical tips. I think just taking 2 minutes a day to think about these things, 2 minutes a day just to think about it is already a great start, and hopefully something that we can all manage to do. So thanks tonight for breaking it down, making it manageable, but still yet challenging us to go for fives, okay? To claim fives, believes for fives, but taking small steps to get there, okay? I think that's really, really important message for all of us to get tonight. I believe that Jesus wants us in fives. He has fives prepared for us. But let's not try to jump to fives right away. Okay, do one step at a time, one day at a time. I don't see any more questions coming in. So I just want to say thank you so much, John, for sharing with us tonight. I think you've done a great job reminding us about what is important and how to, fit it in to our lives. Thank you for that. I want to encourage all of you to join us again next week. Okay, we'll have you John's brother-in-law. Okay, so we're gonna and last week was sister-in-law. Okay, so we're keeping it in the family for a few weeks. But they're all sharing really awesome things. So I'm really thankful for them, each and every one of them. And we're gonna have you self-sharing with us next week. So do join us for that. And as you go out tonight, make sure that you click on that TNCC register and come for church this Sunday. Okay, it's gonna be a great time together. As much as I love seeing your name in a video box on Wednesday nights, I love seeing your face in person even more. All right, it's the family, your favorite time of the evening for the TNCC family is when I finally allow you to unmute yourself and shout out a good evening and a thank you to you, John, for tonight.
Hi, Maria. Thank you, guys. Good night.
Thanks, John.
Good night. Pleasant night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Good job,
everyone.
you.